episode of Hawk Off the Press. My name is Madison Hricik. I'm the Iowa football athletics reporter for the Gazette here in Iowa, and we are continuing once again with our Iowa football assistant coaches series this summer, and we are bringing in the director of strength and conditioning for the Hawkeyes, Coach Raimon Braithwaite. I got that right. I wrote it down phonetically, so I made sure I said it right. Coach, welcome to the show.
Nailed it. Thanks for having me, Madison. Good to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk about this. The Hawkeyes are knee deep in summer workouts. You and I were just talking about it. They just had a week off in between their 8 weeks between the end of spring ball to training camp. So they're back, and I believe you just said that one of the groups were in a lift before you and I sat down to chat. So they are knee deep in getting ready for training camp. But we're going to talk about the process that it takes to get them ready for training camp and for a football season. So I first want to start with this. Coach, what made you decide that you wanted to come and be a strength and conditioning coach? What got you into this profession, and more importantly, why Iowa?
Oh, great question. I originally thought I wanted to go the sports medicine route and be an athletic trainer when I was in college. I switched gears sophomore year. That summer, I worked at a PT clinic, just getting some hours, just working as a rehab tech in the clinic, and that coincided with taking my first strength conditioning class. The PT experience, I saw the PT, the training, the athletic training, and the strength conditioning as two sides of the same coin. One is a little more reactive, one is more proactive, just in my experience. I felt like in the athletic training space, it was more you're reacting to something that already happened, injury wise, versus on the strength conditioning side, you're trying to help decrease the prevalence of injuries within athletes. So I felt I wanted to be on that side of the ledger. What drew me to Iowa? So I went to grad school at Florida State University, and out of grad school, Iowa was my first position. I got hired on by Coach Doyle back in 2002. So that's how I got here. I have no connection to the Midwest when I moved here originally. And so that was my first introduction to Iowa football.
Mm-hmm. Listen, as somebody who was a little bit of a Midwest transplant myself, I can understand the craziness of moving out to the Midwest. But one of the things that is so important when it comes to preparing for a football season is getting a lot of high school athletes adjusted to what it's going to take in college. So let's start with a lot of the young athletes, particularly since the last of the class of 2026 just got on campus at the beginning of June. What do you usually do when you sit down with a lot of these high school athletes, whether it's in January or June, and kind of help prepare them and figure out what they're needing and what their goals are while they're in the weight room with you?
So the first thing that we do when we bring a freshman on campus, whether it's they're coming in earlier in January or in June, is there's an evaluation process that happens. On the sports med side, they do their own evaluations, and we do the same thing on the strength conditioning side. Reason being, everybody has a different genetic background, a different set of parents. Everybody has a different athletic background. Some guys are coming to us as 4 or 5 sport athletes and never get a true off season to train in the weight room. Some guys might play football in the fall and then basketball in the wintertime and spend the rest of the year training for football. And so bringing those different populations in, you have to get an idea of how their body works, how the body moves. So we take everybody through a movement screen just to see if they've developed any dysfunctional movement patterns over the course of playing their sports. It also helps us identify any asymmetries they may have developed from front to back, left to the right side of their body. The first week is all teaching and evaluation. We don't operate under any assumptions on a guy's knowledge to the weight room of just basic movement patterns, how to do a hang clean or a squat. We operate as though the guys coming in have never trained before. Just, again, people coming from different populations might have been taught with different training cues. And so it's not fair to assume anything with anybody. Granted, the majority of our guys are familiar with the weight room, but again, the way we do things could be different from where they previously trained. So the first week is just teaching them the Iowa way of strength conditioning, the way we do things. So between, the orientation we do in the weight room and on the field, over the course of a 5-day week gives us an idea of what guys need from a training perspective. That in addition to the movement screening. And so for me,
Okay.
we plug guys into one of 5 lift group categories: developmental 1, developmental 2, transitional, team, or advanced. Team and advanced guys are typically upperclassmen. The developmental 1, developmental 2 obviously are typically our younger guys in the program.
hmm And when you say like getting everyone adjusted to the Iowa way, is it sometimes reinforcing technique more so than maybe terminology? Is it a combination of both? Is there an element to learning the specific types of exercises that you're putting these athletes through? How does that kind of go about when you say like it's the Iowa way of getting these guys ready?
I would say it's technique and terminology, in terms of standards, and what we're looking for is, there are more similarities than differences across collegiate strength conditioning. But again, we can't operate or assume that the kid, this 18-year-old coming from the high school setting, understands exactly what we're looking for. So we want to slow cook our guys. We want to be really patient with our guys and make sure they have full understanding of what we're looking for while they're young. We're not chasing numbers right out the gate. We're not bringing guys into the weight room and maxing them out on their first day. It's more of a teaching setting. We're looking for technical proficiency more than anything else. If you develop technical proficiency early, you'll be able to advance and add more weight to whatever movement we're doing, and add intensity to whatever move we're doing if guys are moving well. So that's our biggest concern.
And one of the things about your role is that you're a very collaborative position, working with athletic training and sports medicine and nutrition and things like that, because all of that goes into helping create healthy athletes. How much of that collaboration is involved early on? How much of that continues to be a collaboration throughout the process? How much collaboration do you and your staff do a day throughout the season?
So the collaboration is ongoing from when guys first set foot on campus all the way through until they graduate. Between myself and our sports med staff, our sports nutrition staff, our nutritionist Kira, I lean on heavily with guys that need help on the nutrition side of things. So it's ongoing and it's continuous across all facets of the program. And then as strength and conditioning staff, we collaborate obviously on a day-to-day basis to make sure we're on the same page with the needs of the athletes. And then we meet weekly just to kind of reinforce things and take in observations that other members of the staff may have on things we may need to tweak or things we may need to add. So it's ongoing across the board.
Does that help kind of make it feel like the strength and conditioning staff, the sports medicine and nutrition, that you all are one team collectively? Does that help reinforce that and kind of feel like everyone's all working as one unit versus maybe the strength and conditioning staff is one spot versus like where everybody else is?
No, for sure. There has to be cohesion there, and the especially for the guys on the team have to know that there's a collaboration there, so that we're all speaking the same language and we all see things in a similar manner to get them to where they need to be. If there's any type of dysfunction or lack of cohesion there, it's going to be really hard to hide that if there's a lack of communication. So if there's a definite understanding across the board as far as the communication piece is concerned, across all the different departments and units.
Yeah. How do workouts evolve throughout the season? Because you have summer workouts where you're here now, they're not able to put on pads, they can't tackle one another. You getting to training camp, that starts to add starts to become a factor. Then you're in the season, they're playing a game every week. Then you go to bowl prep off season. Like what does that look like? Walk us through. We can get into the nitty gritty, but can you give us a little bit of an overview of what that can look like?
Yeah, sure. So starting in January, early off season, and through the summertime, like we're trying to, and on the strength conditioning side, we're trying to develop physical qualities overall that they can develop to the specifics of their position. So early off season phase, that first 8-week phase prior to spring ball, we're trying to run the fastest, jump the highest, move the most weight. All right. So bigger emphasis in the weight room and on the field in terms of speed work. Not a huge emphasis in terms of conditioning. Reason being is we're not trying to peak our conditioning going into spring football. We want to peak our conditioning going into training camp since we're obviously closer to the season. So that's kind of frames up the early part of the off season. And then they take the physical qualities that they've developed and improved upon from the early off season into spring ball. So they can kind of see what they've developed and come to fruition on the field. So you have, your 5-week spring ball phase, and then we have some downtime in May. We do a little shorter 2-week peak speed phase to take advantage of that training window before they go home in May for a little May break. And now that we're in the summertime, the gears change a little bit, knowing that we're close to the season. Now we're not really pushing intensity to the same level that we were in January in the weight room. Greater emphasis on the field in terms of speed work, greater emphasis in terms of our conditioning on the field. So that's the big difference between the early off season and where we're at right now. We're trying to, in July, peak our conditioning, quite frankly, at this point. So when you add something to the plate, you have to take something off the plate. You can't improve and really be high intensity in the weight room and on the field and conditioning. Something's going to break down. You can't chase 2 rabbits at the same time. You're not going to catch either one, right? So right now, our biggest emphasis is on the conditioning piece. Drop the volume on our speed work, bigger volume on the conditioning piece these last 3 weeks that'll take us into preseason camp. And obviously the focus of preseason camp is on the field. So guys will still train during preseason camp, but our goal in terms of training during preseason camp is for it to be more restorative. Like, we don't want to lose the gains that we've developed over the prior 8 months. At the same point in time, we don't want to push them to the point in the weight room where it takes away from what they're developing on the field, because that's a relatively tight window. You have the month of August to, really formulate the team as to what it's going to be in the fall. So we have to be smart with the way we attack those things. So our guys are still training, all right, but we know what we want to keep the main thing, for lack of a better term, and that's on the field. So, we're training, we typically train 4 days a week during camp. But again, the training sessions are much shorter. They're in and out, maybe 30 minutes. When we transition into the season, that's where things get a little more stratified amongst the team. You have the guys that are in the travel squad, the 2 deep roster, that those guys will lift twice a week. Everybody else on the roster that's not on the travel squad will lift 3 times a week. And so when you're looking at it from a macro perspective, the entire calendar year, our longest training cycle is in season. So going back to January, we trained 8 weeks in January. In the summertime's 8 weeks long, but you mentioned we have a week-long break in between. So you train 4 weeks in June and then 3 weeks in July. That's 7 weeks. You have a 5-week spring phase that we're still training in. The season, you have 12 weeks, 12 game weeks. Then you have a bye in there. It's 13 weeks. And then you have bowl prep. Ideally, we're going to play, the goal is to play into January. So you're looking at upwards, you're looking at 18, 20 weeks, maybe 22 weeks of training. That's our biggest training window. So where I'm going with that is we treat our in-season as a mini off-season, because guys that aren't playing a ton can make a huge amount of gains in the weight room in terms of physical development if we have the right amount of focus on that during the fall window, the in-season window. And so intensity for the guys that aren't playing in the weight room, the intensity is much higher than the guys that are playing on Saturdays, because obviously the goal is to play well on Saturday. So we don't want to beat them down over the course of the week. They're already going to be practicing. So we have to be smart with the way they train in season. At the same point in time, we don't want them to degrade in terms of their strength and their speed. So we still have to be mindful of being able to push that and maintain that. But at the same point in time, the other part of the roster, the guys that aren't playing a lot, they have to develop for us to be successful long term.
Well, let's go back to this summer. You mentioned that right now you're trying to peak the conditioning. And this has maybe come from the former athlete in me. When I hear conditioning, I'm thinking suicides on the field, running up and down to the 25, the 50, the 75, that full length of the field. It's bleachers in the stadiums, things like that. When you say conditioning, is there a different version of it? Is it a lot of explosive work in terms of maybe working with wide receivers, running backs, tight ends where they need that explosion? Or is it something that may be a little bit more stereotypical, the laps, the suicides, the up and downs, that kind of thing?
I would say it's broken up into 2 pieces. More general, kind of what you described, running 55-yard sprints, 60-yard shuttles. So it's not all linear running. It's not all change direction. We try to mix in a little bit of both. And then there's also a piece that's a little more football specific in training, where they're doing more football specific movements that will get them comfortable with doing those things, those similar movements when we get to training camp. And so it's a little bit specific, a little bit general in pieces. So it's a little bit of both, I would say.
Okay. How is that? How does conditioning training work differently for, say, an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman compared to a corner or a receiver or a running back? When there might be some differences in what you're looking for in terms of their actions on the field.
So on the general side of things, when we're just running basic strides or sprints, there's different time requirements based on position. So that's how we get specific there. And then obviously when we get to the specific football specific training, there's going to be things that wide receivers and DBs do that's going to be different than what linemen do. Like linemen might be like pushing prowlers versus skills and skill guys, and our mids, our semis, our linebackers and tight ends might be doing more chase drills or planning and cutting and sprinting and things of that nature. So that's how we break it up there.
And going back to some of the collaboration side of working with athletic training and nutrition and things like that. I mean, football, with how demanding it is in the sport, where do you guys work to find balance of like active recovery within a lot of these training elements? I know you said there's some of that during the season too, but especially when you are trying to reach a peak ahead of a football season in the heat of July and things like that, where do you find ways to have active recovery in those moments too?
So we end every training session with some sort of soft tissue mobility work, just to downregulate the nervous system and get them into a more recuperative state. I think so. We can only account for the time we're with them, right? So we have a good grasp of volume and intensity when they're in the building. What we can't account for is the other 22 hours of the day when they're away from us. So that's where education is key. That's where we have to teach them the importance of sleep. So just the basics. We really hone on the basics. We want our guys getting at least 8 hours of sleep a night, and we educate them ad nauseum about that. Staying hydrated. It's hot outside right now. They can't take for granted the importance of, fluid intake, and then the nutrition piece as well. So those are the three pillars of recovery. If you were to run into any of our guys on the street and ask them like what the pillars of recovery are, they'd be able to kind of run down what those things are in detail. So those are the things I harp on, just nailing the basics. Nothing supersedes, especially the sleep component. You could be doing all the other fancy recovery modalities on the planet, but if you're not getting enough sleep, like nothing is going to supersede that. So that's where it begins and ends.
I mean, that makes a ton of sense as somebody who's, as you and I were talking about before, and a little bit on the injury reserve myself. Sleep has been huge in my own recovery and getting myself back to running. But let's talk a little bit about goals with these athletes, because I feel like that's something that's extremely important throughout the season, but also in these off season, you hear a lot of conversation of what are your goals? How do you achieve them? You work with everybody on this team. How do you have conversations with athletes and help tailor to their individual goals? Maybe it's, putting on a couple pounds of muscle. Maybe it's being more explosive. Maybe it's maxing out by the end of the summer on a bench press or something. Like where do you find ways to learn and develop those individual goals?
So that starts in the early off season. So I'll meet with every guy on the roster in January at the beginning of the entire process to go over goals and establish goals. Even before that, when guys are freshmen that come into the program, whether it's in January or June, I'll sit down and have an individual meeting with them before they've even trained, just to talk about what do you want to get done? What do you want to accomplish before you graduate from the University of Iowa? And these goals can be, personal, academic, social, as well as athletic, just to get an idea of overall where they see themselves and what their path is and where they're trying to go. And it helps in terms of accountability, because these have to be your goals, not my goals. Like, you're the one doing this and running this race. So it doesn't matter what I think if it doesn't line up with what their ultimate goals are. And that's where it starts, is having conversations with guys to figure out where they're trying to go. And then we can figure out a path to get there.
And one of the things you and I were talking about before this is an element of team bonding that you try to help create, especially when it is the summer and they're not necessarily in pads as often. one of the things that I've seen just across football is you see a lot of videos of, a teammate going for a max and everybody else crowding around them, hyping them up, getting them ready to cheer them on. What's it like seeing the team bonding element of being in the weight room, being on the field and conditioning come to fruition just as a coach?
That's the best part of the job. That's why you do it, is to, have an understanding of where guys trying to get to and see them actually get there, and understanding what goes into them setting a PR on a squad or a bench, or, a 10-yard sprint, or apply it to the field. Guys like, I really want to start there with freshmen. I really want to start at the University of Iowa. I want to earn a spot in the 2 deep. And you see them reach that goal, and then they set another goal. I want to be, starting corner on the University of Iowa football team. They reach that goal, and then, hey, I want to be one of the best guys in the Big Ten conference. I want to be all Big Ten. Okay, they reach that. That's what it's all about. That's why we do it. That's the most fulfilling thing in this profession, is seeing guys reach their goals.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I have noticed is throughout this off season, I believe it was Cooper DeJean had said, one of the best things about him playing for Iowa was the fact that he felt he was NFL ready by the time he got to the pros. How much of that kind of validates and credits not only the coaching staff that is actually doing the X's and O's side of football, but also knowing that you had a piece in helping prepare him and a bunch of other now NFLers that are playing in the pros that have gone through the strength and conditioning program you and your staff have created?
We don't, when guys come into the program, we don't talk about the NFL. The NFL, their prospects and their ability to play at a high level when they get to the NFL is a byproduct of the entire program, not just strength and conditioning, as a byproduct of how we do everything and the demands that we put on them and the sacrifices they're willing to make to improve themselves, not just as athletes, but as human beings. The best guys in the program, the best people always make the best athletes. Like Cooper DeJean is a great guy. And because he's a great guy, he's able to maximize his potential on the football field. And so when guys come in with an understanding that it's not just about being a really good athlete, that's the cost of entry is being really good at football. But what's going to set you over the edge is how you do all the little things, your day-to-day, your daily habits are going to lead to success down the line. And that's emphasized throughout the entirety of the program.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned doing the little things. So I'm going to talk about something you and I were chatting about before this. The Hawkeye Championships I believe it's still going on from my understanding of what you and I discussed.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that. And are you able to give us some insight as to how that championship battle has gone on so far this summer?
So I can talk about the whys behind it. So the Hawkeye Championship is just the name we give to our off-season team competitions. So the way it's formulated is the team early in the off-season, after our first 2 weeks of training, the team will select captains. All right. So the team will vote for 12 captains, and those 12 captains I will pair up. Offense and defense. I try to get as much offensive defense crossover as possible amongst the captain pairings. And then those captains will select teams. They'll draft their own teams. And the goal of the Hawkeye Championship, yes, is to develop team camaraderie. It's also to help us develop habits and a mode of operation. What I always tell them at the beginning of the off season is if we're operating the same as a team in August as we are right now in January, this whole thing will be a failure. We should be more communicative. We should be closer. We should everything about us, the way we operate, should improve by virtue of the fact that we're participating in the Hawkeye Championship. And it's not, the emphasis isn't just on athletic ability. So we tell the captains character is going to win this competition, not athletic ability. Now, athletic ability has a part in it because there are athletic competitions, and we measure, rank, and post everything. So if we're doing like resistance sprint work in our speed sessions prior to a workout, we measure, rank, and post all that stuff, and guys get points based on where they finish in that. But the bigger thing and the bigger influence is our day-to-day, like I talked about Coop's day-to-day habits, is the day-to-day, habitual things that you do that are going to lead to success in the weight room, on the field, in the classroom. If guys are dialed in with the way they carry themselves and conduct themselves on a day-to-day basis, they're going to become better across the board. So just the little things like, are you picking up after yourself? Are you cleaning up after yourself? Did you leave your cleats in the indoor? You forgot to go pick up your cleats. If you forget to clean up after yourself, that's going to be negative points. Conversely, if you're on point as a team with everything that you do, no one shows up late, everyone attends on all their meals, everything's clean, that team gets bonus points for that day. If you stack days on top of days over the course of a 5-day training week, that's bonus points for a weekly bonus. If you do all those things, if you're perfect with everything that you do over the course of a month, that's a bigger bonus. So it's not the big swings that are going to do it. It's the constant daily disciplines that are going to lead to bigger results. And that's what we emphasize in the Hawkeye Championship.
Mm-hmm. So I have to ask, if the team is doing a draft and everything, do you guys go full team draft and make it a full event? Is it something that the players, the 12 captains, just kind of decide among themselves? How does the draft side of this go about?
So the captains will draft their teams just amongst the captains, and that's very formal in a very formal setting. There's a timer, and they only have so much time to select the teams, and they do their homework going into that draft to kind of formulate a plan as to how they're going to organize and set up their team. And then from there, we'll announce who's on what team, and then we take off from there.
Okay, so the rest of the players don't know which team they're going to be a part of until after the draft is done. It's just within. Okay, there you go.
Yep.
What's it like seeing teams have that kind of collaboration and build trust among one another throughout the summer with this? I know there's the competition side of it, but as you mentioned, it's a lot more about building habits and building good habits.
So it's interesting. There's a piece to the Hawkeye Championship about that they get points for literally getting together with one another away from the training space, just to have a meal. You have a meal with your teammates, or go have ice cream with your teammates. Go to the Dairy Queen and snap a picture of you and your teammates getting together. That's extra points. And so just that natural, organic team cohesion that you build. Because again, they draft their teams across positions, and you're going to spend a majority of your off season with guys in your position room. So just for guys to have that ability to get to know guys that they wouldn't normally under other circumstances, because you got to remember they're siloed off in their lift groups. So if I'm lifting at 6 a.m., I may not ever see or have limited exposure to the guys that are lifting at 10 a.m. But the more you do away from the building, I think it's interesting to see how guys get together who wouldn't normally cross paths on a regular basis, and just seeing that evolution of the team come together is really cool to see.
And this is something you've done for a number of years now at this point. So do you like getting to watch this start to click, start to see those bonds form, so that by the time training camp comes around and things like that, you can see that development firsthand of the team kind of coming together?
No doubt. And it also creates horizontal leadership. So now the captains, now we talk about this from the very beginning. The captains can't be the only ones holding people accountable, because the captains can't be everywhere all the time. And so, I emphasize that you can be a leader without the title of being a leader. You can hold guys accountable on your Hawkeye Championship team. If I'm lifting at 6 a.m., and I have 4 guys on my Hawkeye Championship team lifting at 6 a.m., I'm going to make for damn sure that these guys are on point. When Coach Braithwaite calls it up, their cleats are tied, they have the training gear on, everybody should have issue gear on, and they're ready to go, and they're going to operate a certain way. And so that if I'm like Reese Vanderzee or Jay Montgomery and they're lifting at 8 a.m., they can kind of check back in. Okay, I know those guys are on point because there's other guys on their Hawkeye Championship team that are going to hold them accountable. And so the demands it puts on everybody else to see and hold each other accountable is what's going to lead to success in the fall.
Mm-hmm. It makes a ton of sense too. Kind of getting into a little bit more of just your experience with this program. Do you have a time of year that you're like, this is my favorite time of year working with these athletes? Is it the summer? Is it the beginning? Is it that beginning lift when it's really heavy in the weight room? Is it in season? Or is it do you have favorites among each time of year?
Yeah, there's definitely time of year has its points where it's like it's really everything gets amped up and you really enjoy it. In the wintertime, obviously it's test week when the guys are actually you get to see the build up and okay, the work that's been put in the prior 8 weeks. Okay, let's see, when it comes time to test and evaluate what you've developed, let's see how guys deliver it during that window of time. And then obviously spring ball, you get to see them actually do what they're here to do on the field. And then for me personally, in the summer, I like the entirety of the summer because you can see the seasons like right there. Training camp is right. You're on the cusp of getting there. So, and then there's different challenges and adverse situations in the summer from a conditioning standpoint that really guys have to figure out how bad they want it and how bad they want to improve. And so just seeing that guys have to deal with that and see them overcome the challenges that come with that is really rewarding. And then obviously the season, like everything, guys don't come here to lift weights and run sprints. They come here to play football. And so no one cares what anybody's hang clean is or their 40 time is when, we line up to play our first game. There's not going to be a squat rack and a bench at the 50-yard line. So it's really like the season is where everything has to come together. So that's, without, not much to say as far as why that's important and why that's fun.
Mm-hmm. And, you talk about the athletes putting themselves first and them being the ones to dedicate the time and the energy into their own development. But where do you come in as a motivator and as a coach and as another person that they can rely on within the building? And how does that blend into the resources that they have within the program as well?
So myself and the entire strength conditioning staff, we have to be consistent with our approach and consistently demanding with our approach. You got to remember that these guys are young. They're 18 to 22-year-old guys, that this isn't the only thing that's going on in their life, right? They're college students. Some of them have girlfriends, they have relationships, they have family stuff. So we have to be unwavering in our demands on what they have to do. And they have to be have an innate ability to compartmentalize, like whatever they have going on outside the building, you can't bring it into the building. And if you bring it into the building, we have to be there to help them out with whatever issues they have because they're human beings, and it's not just, they don't operate in silos emotionally and mentally. So we have to have an uncommon antenna for that to understand what guys are going through. While at the same time, we have to push them. Like we can't take days off or, okay, your girlfriend broke up with you. I'm sympathetic to that, but we still have to get the work done. We still have stuff we have to do. So we have to be consistent with our approach and the way we communicate with guys, because we may be the most consistent thing going on in their lives at any point in time, because classes change from semester to semester. Different instructors, there's windows of time where they're not with their position coach. We have to be the consistent thread through everything that they do. And so that's a big piece to this whole process.
Yeah. I don't want to get in, I don't want to say superlatives because I feel like that's a strange word, but I want to get into a little bit of just understanding the makeup of this team and where you've seen individuals kind of take strides this season. Let's start with something maybe a little bit more general, but is there an individual on this team or in previous years that just kind of it kind of just touched a heartstring or something, just knowing that they put in the work, it worked out for them, and they you developed a close relationship with them because of what they were able to accomplish?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I know it's kind of broad, but if there's one that comes to mind, I'm sure there's probably a couple.
The last chapters of this team have yet to be written, so I don't want to really, comment on these guys because there's still a lot of work to be done. Just as I reflect, I would say last year's team, given what they've been through, there's a lot over the last 3 years on the field, all the highs and lows. One thing about last year's team is I respect the hell out of is their consistency, regardless of how things shook out the previous week, win or loss. The next week, they always came back ready to go. And I thought they were very resilient, and they were, the locker room was very strong. They were a tight knit group. And it was gratifying to see them finish the season the way they finished it. That was really enjoyable.
Mhm. I think there were a lot of people that found the end of last season very satisfying, just with how close they were in so many different occasions on the field. Kind of looking at maybe some recently graduated Hawkeyes who are in the NFL. I know once they graduate, but getting ready for the combine, the draft, they're doing a lot of individual work away from the building. But how do you maintain that relationship with those athletes as they're preparing for whatever their next step in their career might be?
So one of the things when they go off to train wherever they decide to train, I always let them know that they always have a home here. Like it's not, can I come back to train? It's just say, tell me when you're coming back and come back and train. So we have actually right now we have a number of guys that are back in town training before starting up training camp here in July on the back half. So the relationships are always there because you've been with them since their freshman year. So it's
Mhm.
an open door policy, and we don't have good guys. We have great guys in this program that have been
Mhm.
throughout the years. So it's easy maintaining relationships.
Mhm. Well, I'm sure there's also a comfort level of working with the same equipment that they worked with in college. Look, I think back specifically to this recent draft class or the last couple of years of the familiarity of the football building and things like that, that can come into play too as well, right?
No question. And I think the guys that do come back and train in the offseason have an understanding that what got them to the NFL from a physical development standpoint and a mode uh, a mode of training and the intensity of training is what's going to keep them in the NFL. And so I think that's why the guys that do come back continue to come back because they understand the importance of developing their physical qualities throughout their careers. So I think that definitely helps as well. And like you said, the
Mhm.
familiarity of the sports med staff and coaching staff and everything brings guys back.
Yeah. I got one more question for you here. Looking at this role, I know we talked about the summer might be lean towards a little bit more of your favorite time of year in terms of just when you get to work with these athletes, and the football season is the football season itself. But when you work in a job like yours that is one where you're really tailoring to individuals and their goals, what is it like seeing year after year athletes achieve those goals or find ways to achieve it and adjust the timelines based on circumstances that they're going through, whether it's injury, they didn't get the playing time they wanted, or they're starting over this year? What is it like, just as somebody who's been around this program as long as you have, to see athletes achieve the goal, but then also get up and try again just as much as they're achieving it?
That's the best part. Going back to the injury piece, you see guys that I think of a guy like Addison Ostrenga, who tears his Achilles early in the season last year, and you talk about a guy that's always the first guy in the building, last guy to leave the building. Awesome teammate, great leader, checks every box, and you see him stay with his teammates, be like one of the best teammates, even though he's not playing. Full investment all the way through the process. Right now he's a current Hawkeye Championship captain, and I think he's trending towards having another great year for us. Like situations like that are awesome because you just see, to your point, the resiliency in guys and the investment in their teammates in the program. It's just awesome.
Mhm. That's awesome. Well, Coach, I appreciate you taking the time. This has been a great time, getting to learn a little bit more about what goes on this time of year as fans are counting down the days to September 5th, and now that we're officially less than 2 months away from kickoff.
Yeah, it's getting close. It's going to be here before you know it.
No kidding. Well, Coach, thank you so much. If you guys like this content, there's a new Hawk Off the Press episode every single week. There's also a free newsletter at thegazette.com with the exact same name, Hawk Off the Press, that comes out every Tuesday and Friday at 11 a.m. in your inbox. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.